It's time to welcome a new group of communications executives into the Light Reading Hall of Fame. The Light Reading Hall of Fame was started back in 2010, and it recognizes individuals for their contributions to the global communications industry. We acknowledge both the famous and the infamous, and the only requirement is that our editors at Light Reading have to agree that the people inducted were truly influential and truly mattered in the global communications industry. Let's find out who made it. Following his appointment to chairman of the FCC in early 2017, Ajit Pai said he wanted to go easy on regulating the industry and to cut through red tape so he could help businesses better compete and also serve consumers. How well did he do? Well, consumers are now paying more for services and have fewer options to get connected than they did just a few years ago in the US. Pai's biggest accomplishment to date has been his reversal of the so-called net neutrality protections. He argued that the industry didn't need that stifling regulation. With those rules sidelined, telecom and cable companies can, if they simply disclose their actions, arbitrarily suppress content providers and internet-based services running on their networks. The only thing that regulation was actually stifling was keeping de facto monopolies from acting like real monopolies. Pai also had a hands-off approach to broadband mapping. This let the industry put through 4G coverage maps that were so bad that the FCC itself found them to be inaccurate about 40% of the time. But who cares about all that? 5G is here. And to his credit, Pai has been freeing up the airwaves and busily making spectrum more available for 5G networks. Getting more airwaves for new services definitely pleases telcos and other companies, but it hasn't really changed the fact that the US has some of the slowest and most expensive broadband networks in the world. In a pandemic, connectivity is more important than ever before, and 118 countries have broadband service that's less expensive than the average US ISP. Smart regulators can work with the industry to fix such issues. Self-absorbed ones jockey for more camera time so they can read their mean tweets. American billionaire Charlie Ergen is the chairman of Dish Network, a company he founded in 1980. And yes, he was actually a professional gambler before he started working as a telecom and satellite executive. Ergen has long wanted Dish to be a major force in the wireless industry. His company has acquired hordes of spectrum over the years. Its intentions for what it was going to do with that spectrum was pretty much unclear until T-Mobile and Sprint announced that they were merging. Dish struck a deal with the Justice Department to take on more spectrum and assets from Sprint so that Dish could become a nationwide carrier and a future 5G powerhouse. Over the years, Ergen and Dish have talked about building LTE networks, merging with T-Mobile. It tried to buy Clearwire out from under Sprint. It's been in and out of court over the years for ad-skipping DVRs, and yes, Dish was the first company to create a device and a service that could both deliver HD TV to consumers and skip commercials. God bless him for that. In a recent Light Reading interview, Ergen talked about being a mobile industry disruptor and said the promotion of eSIM technology, which Dish's new wireless division would use, will allow consumers to change phone providers without changing their devices. Charlie Ergen talks a lot of noise, takes big risks, and by most account, he's a difficult person to deal with. In our industry, that's really saying something. But Ergen's drive and entrepreneurial spirit has turned this industry on its head more than once in the past, and it looks like he's getting ready to do it again. YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki has one of the most pitch-perfect Silicon Valley origin stories. She grew up in the Valley, went away to Harvard, returned to the Bay Area in 1998, and it was then that she rented her garage to Google's founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, and no one ever heard from them again. I'm kidding. They turned out fine. In fact, Page and Brin are more wealthy now than they would have been otherwise, thanks largely to Wojcicki. She came up with AdSense, one of Google's foundational money spinners. She pushed them to buy YouTube, the largest video sharing platform in the history of... Do I really have to explain what YouTube is? Just Google it, for gosh sakes. From early in her career, Wojcicki has been an advocate for women in tech and working mothers. Over the years, she supported the causes that she believes in with charity, and she frequently uses her visibility and her position in the industry to advocate for companies to both offer better maternity benefits and also for the tech industry as a whole to work harder to address the gender gap in hiring. But Wojcicki and YouTube also have a lot of work to do. The company seems to be constantly in a reactive mode regarding the torrent of disinformation that is spread all over the internet about public health and the current pandemic. Also, if you check any list of the highest paid YouTube influencers, you'll see that it's whiter than a polar bear eating a mayonnaise sandwich in a snowstorm. Indeed, YouTube would certainly not be where it is today without Wojcicki's leadership. We desperately hope she can keep that platform on the right side of history. Michael Howard, a longtime industry analyst and the co-founder of the research firm Infonetics, passed away in October of 2019. More than one reporter that I've spoke to has pretty much said the same thing about Michael. If you went to an industry event or a venue that you had never been to before, seeing him was your clue that you were in the right place. Something was definitely happening. And we all loved Michael because if something was happening or something needed to be said, he would not only say it, but he would help you learn more about it. He was a great industry sounding board and an excellent teacher. Michael definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and he is truly missed today. To explain a bit more about how Michael knew so much about so much, we'll wrap up this year's Hall of Fame presentation by handing it off to my former Informa colleague and Michael's daughter, Jamie Stewart.
Michael was my father and business partner. We started Infonetics Research back in 1990 with his passion for technology and people front and center. He made a lasting impact across the industry. Service providers, vendors, investors, journalists, other analysts. And when people think of him, they usually smile. They remember the twinkle in his eye, his warm smile, his hearty laugh, and those puns. Ugh, sometimes. Many may not know this, but in the early 60s when he was getting his math degree from UC Berkeley, he was hired by the Systems Development Corporation and hailed then as the University for Programmers as an ARPANET coder, which was the basis for the modern internet. A few years later, he led the team that built the first interbank network, which is the foundation for the modern ATM network. We moved every year until I was 9 as Michael climbed the ladder at new networking companies. Until in the early 70s, we landed in San Jose, the heart of Silicon Valley, where all the action was. Michael was always where the action was. This is where he helped create one of the world's first and largest shared computer networks. It was called TimeNet. He was IT director at Timeshare at the time. TimeNet spanned the globe, and by the end of the 70s, it was larger than the ARPANET. This was the precursor to today's cloud computing. But his greatest passion was being an industry analyst. He loved learning about technology, about people, concepts, art, food, planets, you name it. It was not just a job, but a curiosity-fulfilling adventure. He spearheaded new coverage in many areas, including Ethernet switching, remote access, VPNs, SDN, NFV, mobile backhaul, and many others. He was always searching for what was next. He had enormous energy, let's say twice what people half his age have. He was constantly on the speaking circuit at all the hot conferences, at all the right mixers, and often many in one night. He was always on the move, connecting with people. As you said, Phil, if Michael was there, something was definitely happening. He was famous for asking intelligent questions about how things work, and in a way that people didn't feel cornered, and they were more open with their answers. He was well known for being genuinely interested in people and what drives them. Why did they choose their profession? What brings them joy? Where do they come from? He was always, forever, and everywhere, making personal connections. Many people have said that he is a role model of what they aspire to be, and not just for business, but for life. And this is because of how he treated people. He became one of the most well-known, respected, and loved individuals in the network communications industry. He was a true industry rock star. He was a father figure to dozens, a mentor to hundreds, and an inspiration to countless. He brought out the best in others. He elevated everyone around him with his positive energy. He inspired people to be better people. Thank you, Phil and Light Reading, for this incredible honor. Michael would be so proud. I know we are.